Hello and welcome to Education Marketer Live. Today, everybody wants a community, but most people fail to realize that in order to build one, it requires this radically different way of both thinking about marketing and how you view the world. And in the education space, I can't think of a company that has achieved so much and has gone as far to realize this vision of what community can be than ZeeMe and its student community app. It has over 2,500 college communities, with members of those communities 2 times more likely to apply to their choice school, students 3 times more likely to commit to a school, and this is my favorite stat, 5.5 million friend connections made. So this is the power of community marketing and motion. And today we have two very prominent voices from ZeeMe joining us. We have its CEO, Vanessa Roth-Diduck, and head of marketing, Harrison Soup Campbell, fellow Campbell in the studio. Nice to see you, sir. So both very warm welcome to the show, and I'm looking very forward to introducing you to a UK audience. So thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having us, Kyle.
Well, thanks, Kyle.
Yeah, no problem. I've wanted to have this conversation for a while, and I'm quite a big fan of what you're doing. So the chance to actually, get up close and get under the hoods, and the opportunity to ask you a few questions is quite rewarding. So Vanessa, ZeeMe isn't new to like a US audience, but it might be slightly new to a UK one. And in the US, it is a bit more established as pretty much a mainstream route now that people use to discover their university choices. And you achieve this through a vision of what peer-to-peer is, and you've got your own kind of take on that. And in the past, you've even gone as far to knock Instagram off its perch on some metrics, which is just remarkable. So this hasn't been an overnight journey. Tell me about the growth of that platform, how you seeded ZD's community, and the techniques you've done to make sure it stays on track, and how have you realised that vision of community marketing in the higher ed space?
Sure. Yeah, thanks again for having us. ZeeMe has been built by sort of following the students and following sort of what they need. And I think that's really been the key to our success, is building for the students first and really listening and deploying all of the strategies that, kind of come out of Silicon Valley, product building and product development. And so we really listened to we initially had a different product, and we saw that students were desperate to connect with each other. The schools wanted to connect with them too, but the students were just really trying to use some features that we had in new ways that we hadn't anticipated. And we realized that that was what they were seeking and craving. So then we really started leaning into that and developing this community space, this social space. And as we did, the students flocked to it and the colleges flocked to it and saw great results from, building community and this kind of community marketing with their students. And so every time we build, we interview students, we do user testing, we listen to what they need, and then we add features that support their journey. And the colleges really benefit from that.
So this is interesting because a lot of the times we say we really value the input from an audience, but sometimes we get distracted from what clients need. And you've got a product background, haven't you? So you're quite familiar with the idea of bloat and how things go from being streamlined to quite unwieldy. Yes. How have you ensured that doesn't happen with your experience? Because I go onto your app and it feels very intuitive, and even it does have a lot of features and ways to interact. It feels very streamlined. How have you controlled that and kept it very focused?
We keep our eye on the target. What is our goal for the students, and then what is our goal for the colleges? So from the student perspective, our goal is to connect students, to help them find the friends and the relationships and the connections that are going to be critical to their success. And so every time we build a feature for the students, we think about that. How is this good for students? How is a student going to achieve this ultimate goal of finding the friends, finding the community where they're going to be the most successful, and then establishing that network that's going to be key to their success. And I think that keeps us really focused, because otherwise, if you listen to all of the requests from colleges and from students, and wouldn't it be nice if it had this feature, or if we pay attention to what other social apps are doing, and we say, oh, what if we just built that feature? Be Real came out. What if we just add a Be Real like feature? It can distract us from our ultimate goal of making sure that students are connecting, are building those relationships that are so critical.
And we know that strategy doesn't work either, don't we? Because we consistently see people like Meta, Instagram, or Meta's a large company, isn't it? But they develop these initiatives and they present them as fresh, but actually it's literally a carbon copy of what's happening elsewhere, and they become quite unwieldy. So I want to dive into the platform a little bit, what makes it different. And Harrison, this might be a good one for you to explore. I've noticed that when you get to know your students and you're first like taking some information from them and building profiles and allowing them to customize their appearance on the app, you don't ask traditional questions that I'd expect in that space. And I've written my favorites down here, and I want to make sure I get them right. What is your favorite Disney princess? How do your friends describe your personality? And how do you like your coffee? Now, there's tons in there. I've just kind of highlighted a few of them. But give me a bit of insight to how you're using that information, how students use it to get a better experience out of the app. Give us a bit more of a three-dimensional view on why you're asking these sort of questions and how that they are useful to you and the student audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like that's, again, speaks to what students want. Again, Zemi is about that personal connection and relationship. And so what better way for a student to be able to get to know other students than through an amazing, rich profile that really speaks to who they are? And I think, one of the things we take so much pride in at Zemi is we've really built an app, a new type of social that gets back to students and users being able to be themselves and celebrate who they are, and be able to find the students and other students on the app that connect with them and vibe with them in a way. And one of the things I feel like here in the US from a higher ed standpoint, we've gotten really, really good over the years at communicating with students, very transactional and information relay and next steps and sign up for this and now you're late here. And we forgot how to just really get to know students and really want to know them. And so, imagine, a school now that's able to queue up an email to their prospective students because they know every prospective student who is a Hufflepuff, and that subject line is attention all Hufflepuffs. We've got some important information, and it sounds crazy, but that's what students are responding to today. They want to feel like we're at a place where we know each other, the schools actually truly know us and care about the things that we care most about. And so I think that's something that really defines the unique experience on Zemi versus other social platforms.
I love that. I mean, the idea of actually targeting someone based on the Harry Potter house, you might think that's a little bit millennial and it's thinking, but
Right.
this is just an example, isn't it? I mean, there's tons of different areas you could focus on, and we often worry about email strategy and communication strategy and how we reach out to people, but actually picking on those interests, that's another way to create belonging. And I was thinking about what you're saying there about helping people meet each other, and I think it was you who first introduced me to this stat. I think I heard you say it on another podcast, but you were saying that most of your audience, I might get the percentage wrong, I think it's 88%, they expect to make friends before they arrive on a university campus. And an app like Zemi, or a way to help those connections happen, is actually very important, isn't it?
It's huge. I mean, that's the world we live in today. I always give the example. I went off to Indiana University in the fall of 1994. I arrived on campus. There was, the day before classes started, a little 30-minute convocation, and hey, go find your dorm room. That was where I met my roommate, Adam, our co-founder. He always jokes and uses the line, I was lucky if I had even made some friends by the time that first semester ended. And that's just not the world we live in today. These students, prospective students today, expect to make those friendships long before they're admitted, now long before they've even thought about applying. It's just moved earlier in the process. And I think one of the things I stress with a lot of our colleagues over here in the US in the higher ed space is this idea of, when does community begin? And if your idea of community starts when they arrive on campus, or community starts when they're admitted, you're late. You're way behind. Today's students, community wants to begin the second they're connecting with other students that are interested in your school And and that's to me what is most important, is giving them that space. And it's hard to do that on the traditional platforms. It's really hard to do that on Instagram. You can do that a little on Discord, but it tends to be a little it's harder because it can be a little less personal with actually your profile pic and your name and all of those interests with your profile. So yeah, we're just trying to build that new space where those students can kind of connect around those shared interests and really find their peers. And so that's ultimately what it's all about.
I think for me, what you're kind of building here, you're almost like using community as a differentiator. So I imagine that a student who is engaged, talking with prospective students who are like them, considering the same school, they might be doing that in one college, but they might not be doing that of another. And it doesn't really matter how ranked the school is. I think that element of actually knowing people and having that conversation can really push people in a certain direction. Has that been your experience with the behavior of your communities on the app?
Yeah, it absolutely does. It's a huge influence in conversion and getting students to actually go through that funnel. So we find that students who are in community and building community, they sort of pull each other through the funnel. So when someone's like, I don't know if I'm going to submit, I don't know, it's a lot of work. I have to write this essay, I have to do this piece. They support each other through it. And they say, no, you've got to, we're friends. We got to all get there, and have dinner together on day one. So they are the ones who are sort of pushing each other and reminding each other why this is the best school for them, why they're part of this community and need to be part of this community for life. So there's a lot of influence in that sort of peer-to-peer connection, I think. And I think that's something where Zeemi is unique because we start so early in the process. So while students are still in high school, while they're just, taking exams or exploring schools, they can join Zeemi and start to get to know the communities that they might be a part of. And it helps them to decide where they belong.
So these are, I think it's important to stress here, this could be in any university community. And the people like pushing and encouraging, that they aren't necessarily paid by the schools. These are other people in the journey. They're going on this sort of journey of discovery together, and all the trials of getting your application in and getting it right. These are not representatives from the school, are they? These are other humans and students going through this process, right?
Right. We have representatives from the schools in Zeemi, the ones that we're partnered with. That can be current students on campus, their student ambassadors, some of their, college reps, whoever they want. But that's not the most influential people in the app. It's really the peers. It's finding your community, finding your people, building, talking about, whatever TV show everybody saw last night, but then also sharing photos of a campus visit. So it's kind of everything. It touches all points for students and helps address a need that they have, what Soup was talking about. So 89% of students expect to make friends before they get to campus, but 8 out of 10 students are also telling us, this is globally, that they're very lonely, that they feel very isolated. And so we sort of touch both of those points and address both of those needs for students.
Yeah, I mean, you're tackling like the idea of loneliness, belonging, and also fit as well. And I think in the past, it's in the current day as well, that we spend a lot of time thinking about like virtual tours and campus visits and things that have been good about generating that sense of fit for students. But what you have here is like an earlier part in the journey where you're establishing fit in a digital space with digital relationships. And we know that young people today are way more open to forming digital relationships with fellow peers than they ever have been. I mean, it used to be the case that you go and play online games with your friends and you've met in real life, but now you make friends in a digital space, and you treat them as if you would have you met in a physical space as well. So, seeing that carry into your peer-to-peer is quite interesting. And I want to break this down a little bit more into the value of those different peer-to-peer relationships. So traditionally, when we've said peer-to-peer in the past, that relationship has been between a prospective student who's quite early in the journey, or maybe they're just maybe a bit closer to university, but they tend to be talking to someone who's at university, at a college, a good few years ahead. And that might not sound like much, but actually when you're that age, those few years can mean a lot of difference. you don't do the peer-to-peer relationship like that, do you? You connect people with where they are on the journey. Tell me a little bit more about that and how that has affected the stickiness of the communities that you have on the app.
Yeah, I love the way Soup answers this. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's huge. It's something that's really uniquely different about us at Zeeme. It's not that current college students are not valuable, right? They are. And all of our college and universities that are using Zeeme, they do leverage their current students. We know that's valuable. We know prospective students will have questions for them, will want to see what life is like through their lens. But it's not the most powerful influence. We see peer-to-peer as truly peer-to-peer, a high school senior with other high school seniors at that exact same stage of the journey, going through it together, just as Vanessa mentioned. I, as the college or university, can tell you we're the greatest thing in the world. The current college student can tell you our school is the greatest thing in the world. But when another prospective student is saying, like, I actually visited last week, it blew my mind, it exceeded my expectations. And when they post that in a chat with thousands of other prospective students, that is extremely powerful and really moves the needle on helping students through this. So, the way I like to look at it through the lens of the prospective student, they see the current college students in a similar way that I would see an older brother, like an older sibling, right? My youngest son's a high school senior, so he's 1 year away from going off to college. His older brother is 4 years older. He doesn't necessarily see his older brother kind of as a peer, but it doesn't mean his older brother wouldn't bring value. And then prospective students see the college representatives in a de facto sense of kind of like they would see a parent. And so again, the true peer-to-peer is the most powerful connection that can be made. The problem is most colleges and universities out there today have not really discovered that. And if they have discovered it, they've not found a way to truly tap into it like that we're able to do on Zeeme.
Yeah, there is that element of being in the business of helping students make friends, isn't it? And a friend tends to be someone who's in that peer sort of orbit rather than someone who's a few years down the line. And you can see, like, if you said this in university marketing offices, you need to help people make friends. It's a very hard thing to sell into the organization, but what you're doing here is you're effectively creating those friendships and making them a deciding factor along someone's journeys. And if you've got a bunch of friends in a community going to the same place that you're going, actually that's actually a very good part, a good thing for marketing to be involved with, because we know that friendships lead and belonging leads to better results, better mental health, all of these different things.
I think one thing to add, Kyle, is that I think it's the community marketing piece. So friends sounds nice, it's what we talk about a lot because it's easy to kind of understand, and it's soft and squishy and feels great. But when you are friends, you trust each other and you lean on each other, and so that's building a community. It is building friendships, and by building that community, when you put your marketing content in front of them, when you run events, now if it's you're marketing to a community of friends, of people who trust each other, lean on each other, enjoy spending time with each other, all of those things, whatever you're marketing to them reverberates in the community. So instead of, a single message to a single student that they absorb and digest in isolation, now you're putting your content into a community where it starts bouncing off of the students. They share it with each other. They build on it. It deepens their affinity to the school, and it sort of deepens their affinity to one another. And so I think that, friendships is nice to talk about, but it really is the key to community marketing, because you can't really build a community if people don't enjoy each other. So they connect around your brand, but they have to connect around each other too and get to know each other. And so we just built a bunch of tools to do that and to facilitate that and to help people become friends so that a school can build this broader community of belonging that they can market into and can kind of help make sure they usher these students through successfully through graduation.
Yeah, it's almost like the brand isn't the unifier, is it? It's those conversations happening around it. And if you're in a school right now, I mean, one of the most powerful things you can do is use these sort of platforms to give those students a chance to meet. Like, your brand enables that, but then you go, I'm out the way. you know.
Right.
And if you look at the content on Zemi, and I can attest this from as an outsider, it's uncorporate, it's very authentic. I don't necessarily like using that word, but it is an example of like a student just doing their daily life, and they happen to snap a picture and they're sharing it in these community groups. They get a lot of love and feedback from other people in that situation, and it feels very true to what it is trying to achieve. It doesn't feel like it's pushing at any time. It feels very collaborative and involving. So, you know, facilitating that sort of stuff is very powerful. I wanted to build on this slightly because you know, one of the things that have been catching a lot of like trend recently and a lot of attention is this idea of the creator economy. And you know, when I'm speaking with clients and working marketing teams, one of the avenues we often explore is this idea of creator partnerships, influencer partnerships. Now, I'm interested to see how you are responding to this as a company, both for the way of aiding schools, but then also how potential influencers in communities and creators in communities are being leveraged and used, and what value they can add. So what's your kind of take on that? Do you think it's something that you can borrow ideas from, or is it something you're kind of taking with a pinch of salt and thinking of in new ways?
I think we were pretty casual creation style, very authentic creator style before most of those other platforms came on board. So even like Instagram was always so polished and perfect, and you know, because it was an app for creators of perfect content. And so everybody's life looks perfect. There's filters. Everything is sort of couldn't look better than it does on Instagram. And TikTok kind of followed that too, and then eventually became a much more authentic kind of platform.
Yeah.
We were like that from the beginning. And so kind of to what you were saying before, our students in the app who are creators are the ambassadors on campus, and are the students who are sort of, we consider them influencers for the schools. But the kind of content that they're creating is the most authentic content you could imagine. It's like, walk to class with me. I forgot my umbrella. Look at what it looks like while I'm dripping, you know, soaking wet. But also like, here's the campus and here's what life looks like. Or, oh my gosh, you know, the dining hall has my favorite food today. Like, look at this hamburger. Like, you'll never have a hamburger as good as this one. And they'll like show it, or they'll say like, here's my friends, we're doing a late night study session. So it's all the stuff that's like the real day in the life type stuff that just can be recorded really naturally. And we lean on our college partners to embrace that, because it can be scary to just kind of let your influencers free to share like day in the life type stuff and not edit it beforehand and not make sure it goes through every department for checks and balances. So that's kind of more of how we've always done it. And I think that the reception has been fantastic. And so it just continues to make Zemi a place where everybody trusts each other. They trust the messages that the colleges are putting out. Each college looks different in the app, which is unusual, because in some other spaces, if you go into Instagram and you look at all of the colleges, it's the most polished content. It can be like the prettiest building on campus, but it's not that different from some of the other pretty quads and pretty buildings. But this is where like campuses can really differentiate themselves by presenting their most authentic selves, I would say. Soup, what do you think?
No, I think that's spot on. And again, Zemi's just a fundamentally different platform, right? All of those other socials, I mean, that's how they're monetizing, right? They've got to create a type of system, a monetization. They're, you know, on our platform as a creator, you'll make more than you will on that other platform. So we want you on our platform to create all that content. And that's just not how Zemi's designed or built. You know, so, you know, we don't have to really kind of play to that. Also, I think if I'm being honest, most traditional platforms, it's all about the content, right? The focus is the content. Why should I follow or be subscribed to your YouTube channel if you're never posting YouTube videos? Why should I follow you on Instagram if you're not cranking out content on Instagram? That's not what drives Zemi. There's wonderful content on Zemi, but again, that's not what drives it. What drives Zemi is students want to connect and chat with each other all day, every day. It never stops. And if you add content, great. You know, you're just kind of like pouring fuel on the fire. But we've built a platform that's not dependent on content creation to have a thriving, engaging space. I think that's, again, something that really separates us from traditional platforms.
I mean, it's music to my ears to hear this, really, because if you look at the trajectory of social media in general and discovery, it's becoming much harder for brands, corporations, creators to stay relevant because they can't keep up with the pace that is needed to keep churning this out. And I think eventually we'll probably see like a hampering down of that, but it's almost like you're almost ahead of the curve on it, really, because you're focusing on quality relationships, conversations that happen at the pace of those community members, not desperately trying to get more content out for the day.
Right.
You alluded to some partners having challenges about selling in the ideas of community and being prepared. I think the phrase you used was almost letting go of control. Because in typical HE environments, the brand is quite hierarchical. It cascades down to all those various different faculties, and we are used to a command and control model. How would you propose that schools start having those conversations about, letting go of control and talking about some of those benefits? Have you got any examples that you've dealt with in the past? I'd be keen to hear that.
I think one thing, and then Soup, I'm sure you work really closely with the schools on this, so you probably have a better answer. But I think one thing is, when I say let go of control, you're letting go of control in a pretty contained, controlled, safe environment. So, we ask them to sort of let go of some of that polish and some of, trust the students to self-regulate a bit and to sort of self-police. So we have a lot of things in the app to control content, make sure that it's safe, make sure that it's positive, all of those things. But then we tell the schools to kind of trust that the students can start to self-police and self-regulate in that way. From a content perspective, we train the students how to create content that is great and meaningful and impactful and will actually move the needle for the school. So we actually do have a bit of a hand in that. And once the schools start to let go of needing it to be, perfectly filmed with some, high def camera on, with like running it through some very expensive polishing software, like all of that, let go of those things and let it just be day in the life stuff by students that you probably trust anyway. The results speak for themselves and are almost instant. So as soon as that happens, you post one video like that in Zeeme, see the response, see the reaction, see the impact that it has on your student community, and then people buy in very quickly. So I think that's also part of it. It's just seeing, like, Zeeme has actual results. We do drive up applications, we do drive up yield. And so I think there's a little bit of like letting go because it works.
Yeah, you've actually proved it. It actually works.
Like, you just let go and you see the results you want. And the communities are beautiful things. I think that blows us away every time, is how supportive, how positive. We've never had a negative community. We've never had students be, sort of toxic to each other. They are fantastically supportive of one another. And so that, I think, always surprises the schools too. It's just
one thing too, just to add too about the content, which is really powerful on Zeeme. Again, on all of our other platforms, on the Instagrams, the Facebooks, that full 100% organic reach died a long time ago, right? Like, those have turned into ad platforms. You can have 75,000 students following you on Instagram. When you post something, 75,000 of those followers are not seeing that content, right? Because there's limits on reach. On Zeeme, the beautiful thing about Zeeme is when colleges and universities really partner with Zeeme, they take full ownership of that community. So, I mean, we've got colleges partnered on Zeeme that have over 100,000 students in their community. When they share content, 100,000 students are able to see and engage with that content. And that's really powerful. There are no algorithms like limiting that reach. And it speaks to that difference between, on all of the other social platforms, of chasing those rented audiences. Yep. You don't own that following. You don't own any of the insights, the data behind that following, and you're just chasing them everywhere they go. If the platform falls, now I've got to find another place to have that community. Whereas on Zeeme, colleges and universities they take ownership of that community. And one of the powerful ways is that they're never going to be limited on the reach of their content for how many students are in their Zemi community.
No, I mean, dicing with algorithms has become like a bit of a horror story for most social teams now. And looking at that idea around reach and engagement, I'm curious about just articulating to people that these communities can happen apart from the brands as well. So, for instance, you don't need to be a college partner to have a community. Students set these things up and they gather anyway. And I did have a nosy about UK audiences and seeing where that crossover is. And there are like communities in the UK and all over the world, really. I mean, the States, you kind of have a hot kind of connection going on, and this is where your origins are and stuff. But they are opening up on their own around the world, aren't they? And this is independent of anyone pushing those things to exist.
Yeah, I think the common denominator is that student experience, right? That no matter where you are, you want to connect. You want to connect with other students. You want to feel that sense of belonging. You want community. I think that is just a common experience, no matter where students are. And I think it's a common experience for schools to benefit from that. And so it's absolutely true. Schools benefit from it even when they are not participating in the community. It's just so much more impactful when they get involved.
So just to bring us home here, I'm conscious about moving us into some sort of practical step-by-step things, because often the idea of setting up a community is quite daunting, let alone managing one. And I think the skill set for managing a community is very different from managing communications to an audience. It's probably about 10 times harder, if I'm quite honest. So if someone's new to the idea of community management and using these sort of community groups and getting involved in these groups, building them up, what are some sort of practical tips would you offer them to get started and approach this with the right frame of mind?
Soup, what would you say? You do more of the strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it takes a fundamental shift in our thinking, right? Just again, if we're looking at this through the lens of colleges and universities, traditionally, especially since social media has become a thing, and marketing in general, we really have placed the focus on us as the college and university, right? And you've already alluded to this, Kyle, with just the brand and how it's all about us, and the focus is on us and what we say about us and what we share about us. But I think we've forgotten what made social media so special when it first started. It wasn't about using it to brand and to market. It was about, wow, we can connect with each other. We can build relationships with each other. This is a great way we can get to know each other. And I think one of the first things that colleges and universities have to do, especially those marketing and communication departments and divisions, they've got to reset, and they've got to allow the pendulum to start to swing back the other direction, where we're not going to stop focusing on us, but we're going to start placing a little bit more of the focus on the student and what's most important to them, and being able to be a part of that community with them. I think that's the first thing I would recommend. And that's really hard. I think that's hard for us in the marketing and communication space to kind of wrap our head around that. But that's what's most powerful. Then the other thing, just with Zemi, again, we've built it. Like, the framework is already there for you. So like, the beautiful thing with Zemi is there's so little bandwidth required. I mean, I think, Vanessa, like, we can partner with a college and university, and within hours, their community is launched and going, because it's just the infrastructure is already there. Schools in the UK right now would be shocked to know, but their school probably already exists on Zemi. They probably already have prospective students there chatting. Just the school hasn't yet stepped in to be a part of that community with them. So the lift is super light. It's harder to do on Discord. You've got to build the server. It takes a lot of energy and bandwidth to manage and keep the server going. Whereas we've built Zemi with all of that structure. I think Vanessa likes that, the pipes are already there. Everything's in place. You just have to step into it and truly take ownership of that space and start to leverage it. So those are just some of my probably tips, I would say, when individuals are wanting to step more into this community space.
I would also say, just throw out the idea of community management. I think that is a big barrier for people who want to get into community marketing. I hear that all the time in community marketing discussions. It's like, you have to have a community manager. You have to have somebody in there who is keeping it going. And I think from a brand's perspective, whether, it's Target or it's, University X, I think they think that the conversation needs to revolve around the brand at all times. And so you need a community manager in there, making sure that they're talking to each other about the brand all the time. And I think that just misses the point. And I hear this on, podcasts and webinars all the time, like how you get them to talk about the brand again. And that's not the point. Like, especially, I think we in this higher ed space have an advantage that there is this need for this community, right? We're not connecting around, a store. We're connecting, or Nike or something like that. We're connecting around this idea of this shared experience of going to college together. And so there is this intrinsic need that students have to figure out, who am I going to be with? Who am I going to be hanging out with? Who am I going to room with? All of those things. And so for higher ed, community marketing is so easy to do. You just have to find the right space, because something like an Instagram, people aren't actually making friends. They're not, you can have a community there, but you're still doing this one-to-many marketing, right? You don't really have a chance to get to know each other around whatever you post. So you have to pick the right venue. We've built Zeemee specifically for this purpose, but there's other venues. You have to pick the right venue to connect your people, and then kind of lean back a little bit and let them get to know each other and actually build that community that's going to be so impactful. Get out of the way. I think community managers can sometimes be too heavy-handed.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective, and it certainly doesn't go along the track of the stuff you hear on popular marketing blogs. It's always about the community manager stoking conversations. And you are right. If the purpose of the community is sound, and there are enough people interested in that common purpose, i.e. finding fit at a university, you shouldn't need to consistently inject in like new layers of conversations. I mean, if you look at something like Reddit, they have like tons of different threads that are really deep, and there's moderators, but they don't spark topics of conversation because people are that invested. So that's a really good piece of advice. Like, yeah, you don't need a community manager per se. And if you do, they probably shouldn't be dropping in branded messages, right?
Right.
Tell me what you think about, this class.
All right, both. It's been really good speaking with you today, and thanks for giving us like a bit of a background on your platform and what's working. It's nice to know there's a few UK schools on there resisting communities as well. And I hope in the future that more schools consider like working with you, because seeing some of the results that you're getting for US partners, honestly it's one of the kind of it's an untapped gold mine, if I'm honest, like what you've got and what you've built. So yeah, full props to you, and thank you for speaking with me today.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you
no
so
problem.
much, Kyle. Yep, this was
thanks. I will speak to you both again very soon. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, Kyle.